I brought you on because you have so much experience and so many vast, areas of franchising. And I want to talk a little bit about what Apple Pie Capital is, of course, and your expertise in franchising. And I know the projects that you're so passionate about. I want to start, though, by getting a little more to know about you. I want the audience to hear about Ron and where your background was that led you to franchising.
Sure. First half of my career, I spent in the burglar alarm business. Didn't have anything to do with franchising. And when I was exiting that business and we knew we were going to sell it, I was in my 30s and I was like, well, what am I going to do after we sell this business? And my wife got an interview to be a director of a Goddard school. And she went and had this interview and they offered her the job. And she said, but it's a franchise. And I said, well, I don't want you to be a director. We're going to become a franchisee. We went through the discovery process. We were very early in the Goddard system. Found out that Goddard's ownership was also the person that started Amco and Mako.
Okay.
Fell in love with franchising. We operated a Goddard school for about 10 years. We were going to become, the empire of Goddard. And I have a little flaw in that I curse too much to be in a preschool. So it wasn't really thing for me to be in the school anyway.
It's a small issue. I mean,
No one wanted to say, guess what Uncle Ron taught me today?
Uncle Ron from Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing his Philly to the preschool.
So, but I got very friendly with Tony Martino, who's the guy that started. Amco is Anthony A. Martino Company. Mako is Martino A. Anthony Company. I got very close with him. And as I exited the alarm business, I had a transactional M&A background. And he basically said, can you help my franchisees get financed in Mako more so than anything else? And he and I became pretty close. He became a mentor to me and taught me the ropes. I became kind of their outsourced finance department. Went to all the discovery days, went to all of the team meetings as a contractor, and did all this while we were running the Goddard School. I hooked up with a guy named Bernie Siegel, who you know probably. Mm-hmm. We built a pretty big finance practice out of that. And then 2008 came, and that was, for those people, if you're emerging, you probably didn't have to live through this and trying to get franchisees finance, but the banks stopped lending and the community banks that did lend wouldn't pay brokers anymore. That business model was crushed. And I went on the road trying to figure out what to do. And I got very friendly with Daryl Johnson and IFA at the time. Matt Shea was the CEO back then. Went up on Capitol Hill and did all kinds of advocacy work. And with Daryl, created a brand scoring model that I was able to convince a bank to give us $400 million to deploy in the middle of the Great Recession, which we deployed most of it. And and we're off to the races. So that's kind of how I got my bones in this business. Being a franchise, I was also a franchisee in the Meineke system for kind of as a silent partner. Nate, my ex-partner, and I had a tax credit franchise. So I've been a franchisee 3 times.
Wow.
So everything through a franchisee's eyes, not so much from a franchisor's eyes. Tony was a man of very few words, Tony Martino. He never graduated high school dropout, and brought actually Cotman Transmissions was his doing. He brought 4 franchise brands national.
Wow.
And the thing that he said to me that I still repeat all the time is franchising simple, provided franchisees make money. If that's true, then everybody wins. So everything really with a 4-wall unit economic mind. That's how I've been underwriting brands for 30 years, and it's worked.
That's awesome. Well, once again, you proved that the old, saying franchising finds you. And I mean, who knew, because your wife was going to, work at Goddard, that's how you would be, go into this industry like that.
Exactly what happened.
Amazing. Yeah. So because you were a franchisee a few times over and on the financing side, I want to talk about, one of the probably the most important part of franchising that I know is part of your passion. And that is the importance of franchisor franchisee transparency. We have a lot of people who in our audience that are emerging franchisor founders. They're trying to get their franchise system established. They're trying to get to that point where they're a mature brand. So I would love for you to kind of hone in more on the importance of the transparency side of franchisor, franchisee, and what exactly should that look like?
If you're an emerging franchisor, one of the most important things for you to do is make sure you're doing apples to apples comparisons. And the best way to do that is to have an approved chart of accounts that your franchisees must use. What each of those chart of accounts defines. In other words, what goes into this category, what goes into this category. Goddard did a great job of that when I got started. I'll tell you how long ago this was. We would fax our monthly P&Ls to corporate, and they would publish them to the entire chain, not anonymously. Everyone knew what everyone else's business was, and it created a level of competition between franchisees that really led to overperformance at the time. They're still that way. If you look at the Goddard FDD today, there is a P&L for all 500 schools in the item 19. They don't name which school it is in the FDD, but they're all there. So as an emerging brand, get an approved chart of accounts and get on a regular cadence of collecting P&Ls. And there's a lot of tools that you can use to do that, to make it simple. I work with a company called Profit Keeper. That's one. You can do whatever you need to do, but collect the P&Ls and use them. Aggregate the data. Give your franchisees the ability to benchmark themselves against your corporate stores. Create that KPI early on of where you want your business model to be. If you do that, you'll identify problems sooner. And the last thing an emerging franchisor wants is a unit to go dark. That's a really bad outcome if you want to grow and you want to attract investment capital or attract banks to your franchisees. Having an item 20 that has closed units when you only have 10 open and 3 closed, not going to work.
Right. One caveat I want to add to what you just said is, for an emerging franchise that's listening to this, it's one thing to collect the financial data. It's another thing to actually use it and apply it and giving the feedback to the franchise network.
100%.
Don't collect it if you're not going to do anything with it.
Well, exactly. And your field business consultants, or whatever acronym you use, should have the P&Ls before they go. They should know where they're missing, if their labor's off, if their cost of goods is off. They should know that before they get there. And that's I'm not doing a commercial, but that's the beauty of what Profit Keeper does. Just makes it simple. All the stakeholders know where everyone is in real time. And that's really important.
Yeah. So in my experience, I did not collect financials when we first started. And we realized that it was important because we did have people like, a lot of emerging franchisors. We had people all over the map, right? From successful to struggling and everywhere in between. So maybe to prepare an emerging founder listening to this, I'd suggest, one, do what you just said. First of all, get it as early as possible. And if you haven't gotten the financials yet, get them now. Like tomorrow is not soon enough. What we ended up doing when we got the financials is we realized, though, that we did need to give feedback. Creating a scorecard with those KPIs, like you were saying, like specific for your model, is so critical. My hesitation back then was, oh my gosh, if I expose all the numbers to all the franchisees across, have full transparency, are the franchisees that aren't doing well going to be upset? And, is it going to motivate? And what I did find is that, yes, it did exactly what you said, Ron. It did motivate, because I'm sure there are people listening to this going, oh my gosh, I haven't collected financials yet, or I'm going to collect them. And you mean to tell me I'm going to be transparent? Like I'm going to show all the data? And to your point, the answer is absolutely yes, right?
100%. And I'll tell you, Tony Martino in his simplicity was brilliant. When he did the Goddard convention or the Mako convention, he would only have programming until 12:30, 1 o'clock. Say, go to the pool. And but before he did that, he would bring up the top performers and they would hold court at the pool, and everybody would go and find out what they're doing right.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.